To truly understand the Internet's origins, we must go back to a time before it even had a name, to the battlefields and laboratories of World War II, where the first seeds of digital communication were sown. In an age dominated by analog technology and mechanical systems, scientists and engineers began imagining machines that could process data at unprecedented speed. The British developed Colossus, the world's first programmable electronic digital computer, to decrypt German messages encrypted by the Enigma machine. At the same time, in the US, ENIAC, Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, emerged in 1945 as a colossal machine powered by vacuum tubes, capable of executing thousands of calculations per second. These were not designed for communication, but they introduced the core idea of programmable machines, a concept critical to the Internet's eventual architecture. In the aftermath of the war, the political tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union ignited the Cold War, which demanded new strategies for survival in the nuclear age. Communication infrastructure became a military priority. If one node of a centralized telephone network were destroyed in a Soviet attack, the entire system could collapse. The RAND Corporation, a think tank with deep ties to the US military, introduced the concept of a decentralized communications network. Instead of relying on a single path for information to flow, messages could be broken into smaller parts and routed across many different paths, an idea that would become essential in packet switching protocols. Meanwhile, other scientific advancements, such as Claude Shannon's revolutionary 1948 paper, A Mathematical Theory of Communication, formalized how data could be encoded, transmitted, and decoded over noisy channels, laying the theoretical groundwork for digital communication. These developments created a silent revolution. Computing was no longer just about machines, it was becoming about networks. While few could foresee it at the time, the stage was being set for a future where computers would talk to each other, and, eventually, to the entire world. By the late 1960s, the United States was in a technological arms race not just on Earth, but in space and cyberspace. Against this backdrop, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, a branch of the U.S. Department of Defense, sought to create a system that could link distant research institutions, allowing scientists to share resources in computing power. In 1969, the first successful connection of ARPANET took place between UCLA and Stanford Research Institute. The initial message sent was supposed to be login, but the system crashed after LO. Still, in those two characters, a new world began. The genius of ARPANET lay in its use of packet switching. Traditional telephone networks relied on dedicated circuits, which meant that once a line was connected, it stayed open even if there was no data being sent. This was inefficient and vulnerable. ARPANET's solution broke data into small packets, each traveling independently to its destination, where they were reassembled. This made the system resilient to failures, ideal for military applications, and revolutionary for data transmission. In its early years, ARPANET connected four major institutions: UCLA, Stanford, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. These connections allowed researchers not only to send messages, but to remotely access and control distant computers. As more universities and institutions joined, ARPANET expanded rapidly. However, it faced limitations in its initial communication framework, NCP, Network Control Protocol, which could not support the scalability required for a truly global network. The need for a more robust protocol led to the development of TCP/IP, which would later redefine everything. But this was more than just a technological milestone. It was the dawn of network culture. For the first time, researchers could collaborate in real time across vast distances. People began to develop the early rituals of online communication, such as remote login sessions and digital file sharing. What had started as a military experiment quickly became the foundation of something much bigger. The ARPANET was not just a network of machines, it was the embryonic internet, carrying the DNA of the digital civilization to come. As ARPANET matured, it became clear that the early NCP, Network Control Protocol, could no longer keep up with the demands of an expanding and increasingly complex network. The protocol lacked the ability to route information efficiently between different types of computer systems across vast distances. A new, more versatile system was needed, one that could support an ever-growing network, withstand failure, and allow seamless communication among incompatible machines. Enter Vinton Cerf and Robert Kahn, two visionaries who proposed a radical solution, a network of networks built on a standardized language that any computer, anywhere in the world, could understand. Their creation, the Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol, TCP/IP, broke down communication into two core functions. TCP would handle how data was broken into packets and reassembled, while IP would handle the addressing and delivery of those packets. This modular approach made the system incredibly flexible. In essence, TCP/IP was the architecture that would give birth to the modern Internet. However, this new protocol did not rise without resistance. The late 1970s and early 1980s saw a protocol war, with alternatives like X25, DESNet, and the heavily bureaucratic OSI model, Open Systems Interconnection, competing for dominance. Ultimately, the open, streamlined nature of TCP/IP won out, not because it was pushed by powerful corporations or governments, but because it simply worked better. It was scalable, decentralized, and efficient. On January 1st, 1983, a date often referred to as Flag Day, ARPANET officially adopted TCP/IP, marking the birth of the Internet as we know it. This day is a cornerstone in digital history. From that point forward, any system that wanted to connect to the network had to speak the language of TCP/IP. It was no longer just an experimental military project. It was a planetary nervous system, ready to connect universities, research labs, and soon, the world's population. The Internet was born not in a flash of light, but in the quiet shift of protocols and ports, silently ushering in a new era of human connection. As TCP/IP solidified its place as the backbone of the Internet, engineers began to formalize the structure of digital communication into what became known as the Internet Protocol Suite, or the OSI model in parallel discussions. This model would define how data moved from a user's fingertips through wires, routers, and servers to its destination, broken down into layers each with a specific role. These were not just technical abstractions, they were the skeletal framework of a digital revolution. At the base was Layer 1, the physical layer, comprising all the tangible infrastructure, telephone lines, fiber optic cables, coaxial cables, modems, and eventually, massive undersea cables linking continents. This was the raw hardware, the skeleton of the Internet. On top of that sat Layer 2, the data link layer, which ensured that data moved reliably across physical connections, using technologies like Ethernet and PPP, point-to-point protocol, to manage how devices identified each other and avoided collisions. Next came Layer 3, the network layer, dominated by the Internet Protocol, IP. Here, IP addresses functioned like postal codes, directing packets of data to their correct destinations across the globe. As this layer matured, the global routing architecture began to resemble a massive neural map, constantly adapting and evolving. Layer 4, the transport layer, home to TCP and UDP, ensured that once a data packet was sent, it either arrived intact or was resent. TCP added reliability and order, while UDP traded those features for speed, useful for things like video streaming and gaming. The top layers, layers 5 to 7, made the Internet personal. They introduced application protocols that everyday users would interact with. DNS, domain name system, made the web human-readable, allowing people to type google.com instead of a complex IP address. FTP, file transfer protocol, enabled file sharing. SMTP enabled email, and most famously, HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, laid the foundation for the World Wide Web. By the early 1990s, these layers had quietly transformed the Internet from a scientific tool into a system with unimaginable reach. The structure was now in place, not just to share data, but to change civilization itself. As the foundational layers of the Internet were firmly in place, a new revolution was about to unfold, one that would bring the Internet into homes, schools, and businesses around the world. In 1989, Tim Berners-Lee, a British computer scientist working at CERN, proposed a way to organize and share information using hypertext links. His vision was simple, but world-changing: a global network of documents that users could navigate by clicking links. This idea became the World Wide Web, and in 1991 the first website went live. Berners-Lee also created HTML, hypertext markup language, URLs, uniform resource locators, and the first web browser and web server, all the basic tools we still use today. What made the web different from the internet was accessibility. While the internet was a technical system used mostly by engineers and academics, the World Wide Web offered a user-friendly interface that anyone could understand. Early browsers like Mosaic in 1993, and later Netscape Navigator, allowed people to surf the internet visually, with text, images, and links all integrated in one space. This democratized digital access. Suddenly, the internet was not just a tool for research. It became a space for communication, business, entertainment, and creativity. The mid to late 1990s saw the birth of online businesses, web portals, and e-commerce. Companies like Amazon, 1994, and eBay, 1995, emerged, fundamentally changing the way goods were bought and sold. Social connection evolved with services like AOL Instant Messenger, GeoCities, and chat rooms. This period, known as the dot-com boom, brought a flood of investment and innovation, as entrepreneurs rushed to stake their claim in the digital gold rush. Yet, beneath the excitement was volatility. Many startups overpromised and underdelivered, leading to the eventual dot-com crash around 2000. Still, by the end of the decade, the internet had firmly embedded itself into the fabric of modern life. The web had exploded from an idea in a research lab into a global phenomenon, connecting millions and setting the stage for the digital age. With the dawn of the 21st century, the surface web became the most visible layer of the internet. The part indexed by search engines and accessed daily by billions of users. It includes everything from Google search results, news sites, social media platforms, streaming services, to online shopping hubs. This is the world of clickable links, viral content, YouTube videos, Wikipedia articles, and breaking news alerts. It's the public face of the internet, where information is structured and made easily discoverable through tools like Google, which revolutionized web navigation when it launched in 1998 with a superior search algorithm. Throughout the 2000s, the surface web expanded rapidly. Broadband replaced dial-up, allowing faster access to rich content. Web 2.0 emerged, emphasizing user-generated content, interactivity, and social networking. Websites were no longer static pages, but dynamic platforms where users could upload videos, post blogs, comment, and participate. Facebook 2004, YouTube 2005, and Twitter 2006 reshaped communication, blurring the line between consumer and creator. With smartphones entering the picture, especially after the release of the iPhone in 2007, the internet was no longer confined to desktops. It became portable, ubiquitous, and deeply personal. The surface web is also where the digital economy thrives. Advertisements, data tracking, SEO, search engine optimization, and e-commerce dominate this space. Services like Amazon, Netflix, and Uber change the way we shop, entertain, and travel, while Google's dominance in search and advertising turned it into a tech empire. But despite its visibility, the surface web only scratches the surface, literally. It's estimated that less than 10% of all internet content is indexed and accessible through standard search engines. The rest lies in the shadows, waiting in deeper layers of the internet where most users never venture. Beneath the sleek, user-friendly surface of the internet, the part indexed by search engines and navigated through browsers, lies a vast, hidden realm known as the deep web. This layer isn't sinister or secretive by nature. In fact, it's the largest part of the internet by volume, estimated to be hundreds of times larger than the surface web. The deep web consists of content that is not indexed by search engines like Google or Bing, either because it is password protected, dynamically generated, or otherwise restricted from public access. While this sounds mysterious, most of the deep web includes completely legitimate and necessary systems that power the modern world. Think of your online banking account, medical records, government databases, cloud storage, academic journals, or even the back end of websites that only admins can access. These systems require authentication and contain sensitive, personalized information that must remain private. Universities, hospitals, corporations, and governments rely on the deep web to store data securely and perform functions that the public never sees. This hidden infrastructure is the digital equivalent of the pipes, sewers, and tunnels under a city, vital for its function, but largely invisible. The deep web is also home to real-time databases, such as flight schedules or court records that are generated on demand, meaning search engines can't easily crawl or index them. It includes intranets, corporate networks, and private forums, many of which are restricted to specific IP ranges or access credentials. While the deep web is mostly benign and crucial for privacy, it can be a gateway to more obscure territory. The dark web, a place where anonymity, not privacy, is the driving force. If the deep web is the hidden infrastructure of the internet, the dark web is its shadowy underworld, a deliberately concealed segment of the internet that can only be accessed through special software like Tor, the Onion Router, or I2P, Invisible Internet Project. These networks were originally developed for anonymous communication and are still used today by journalists, whistleblowers, human rights activists, and citizens living under oppressive regimes. But alongside these noble uses, the dark web has also become infamous for illegal activities, a digital bazaar for drugs, weapons, stolen data, counterfeit documents, and even hitmen for hire. The dark web's anonymity is both its strength and its danger. Websites on the dark web don't end in .com or .org. They use domains like .onion and require tools like Tor browser to access them. Once inside, users find themselves in a digital space that resembles an early, lawless version of the internet. Basic interfaces, pseudonymous marketplaces, and tight-knit forums. One of the most infamous examples was Silk Road, an online black market launched in 2011 that offered everything from narcotics to forged IDs. Its takedown by the FBI in 2013 was a landmark moment that showed even in the dark web, law enforcement could reach in, but only with great difficulty. Yet the dark web is not just a criminal haven. It's a safe harbor for free speech in countries where surveillance is oppressive and censorship is severe. Activists use it to bypass firewalls and communicate securely. Whistleblowers, including sources for organizations like WikiLeaks, have used it to leak critical information without exposing their identities. However, the very same mechanisms that protect the vulnerable also shield cyber criminals, terrorists, and traffickers. Governments and cybersecurity experts are engaged in a constant cat-and-mouse game, trying to track illicit activity without violating the rights of those who use the space for legitimate purposes. In the end, the dark web represents the internet's double-edged nature, a space that can either protect or endanger, liberate or corrupt. It reminds us that the digital world, like the real one, is full of nuance, complexity, and contradiction. While users experience the internet through websites, apps, and online services, the real power of the internet lies in its invisible, physical, and organizational layers, the hidden machinery that keeps the digital world alive and moving. Beneath all code and content is an immense hardware infrastructure that includes data centers, cell towers, undersea fiber optic cables, satellite systems, routers, and switches. These are the roads and bridges of the digital world, connecting continents, cities, and devices in real time. Most people don't realize that more than 95% of international internet traffic travels through submarine cables, some of which stretch across entire oceans, resting silently on the seafloor. These cables are maintained by a handful of private companies, making the internet's physical backbone both powerful and fragile. Alongside the physical layer exists a complex web of protocols, standards, and governance bodies that quietly maintain order in a chaotic, global system. Organizations like the Internet Engineering Task Force, IETF, write the protocols that define how computers talk to each other. ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, manages domain names and IP addresses, ensuring that when you type a URL like www.example.com, it leads to the correct destination. These groups function largely outside the public eye, but their decisions impact everything from domain name ownership to internet neutrality policies. Then there's the cybersecurity layer, an ever-evolving battlefield. With so much of the world's economy, governance, and communication dependent on the internet, safeguarding it from malware, ransomware, DDoS attacks, and state-sponsored hacking has become a top priority. Firewalls, VPNs, encryption protocols, and intrusion detection systems form an invisible shield around sensitive data. Yet no system is invulnerable. The rise of nation-state cyber warfare and mass surveillance has created a new kind of digital arms race. What we often forget is that every web page loaded, every message sent, and every stream watched is only possible because of these intricate hidden systems operating 24/7 behind the scenes. As we look to the future, the internet stands on the edge of another monumental transformation, one that could completely reshape how humanity connects, communicates, and coexists. On the horizon lies the quantum internet, an emerging technology that uses principles of quantum mechanics like entanglement and superposition to create communication networks that are theoretically unhackable. Though still experimental, projects in countries like China and the US are already testing satellite-based quantum key distribution, aiming to launch the next secure evolution of global communication. Simultaneously, the concept of Web 3.0 is taking root, a vision of a decentralized internet where users own their data, platforms are distributed, and power is not held by a few tech giants. Built on blockchain technology, this new model promises to eliminate middlemen, create trustless environments, and support decentralized applications, dApps, that are censorship-resistant and transparent. If Web 2.0 was about social interaction, Web 3.0 is about digital sovereignty. Even more transformative is the rise of the Internet of Things, IoT, a world where billions of everyday objects, from refrigerators to cars to medical implants, are connected and constantly exchanging data. This machine internet could enable smarter cities, precision agriculture, real-time health monitoring, and fully automated industries. But it also raises serious concerns about privacy, data overload, and algorithmic control of human life. Moreover, geopolitical tensions are shaping the digital future. The idea of a splinternet, where countries erect digital borders to control content and infrastructure, is becoming a reality. Nations like China and Russia already maintain their own tightly controlled versions of the internet. As global powers clash over data sovereignty, censorship, and technological supremacy, the once unified web could fracture into competing spheres of influence. Ultimately, the internet of the future will reflect the same moral dilemmas and power struggles that shape the real world. As technology becomes more powerful, the question remains, who will control the next evolution of the internet? And will it serve the people or the powerful? Whether it leads to global empowerment or digital authoritarianism depends not just on engineers and coders, but on the choices made by societies, governments, and individuals in the years to come.